The year is 700. The Western Roman Empire is a distant memory, its echoes faded across a fragmented Europe. This is a continent of fledgling kingdoms, of shifting borders and uncertain futures. To the east, two great empires dominate the known world: the Byzantine Empire, the resilient heir of Rome, and the vast, powerful Umayyad Caliphate, whose dominion stretches for thousands of miles. The 8th century has dawned upon a world balanced on a knife's edge.
This century would not be a quiet one. It was a crucible of profound and violent change. It was a time when old dynasties would crumble, new empires would be forged in fire and faith, and from the cold northern seas, a new and terrifying force would emerge to write its name in blood and legend. This is the story of the 8th century, 100 years that laid the foundations for the medieval world.
Our story begins in the heart of Western Europe, in the Kingdom of the Franks. For generations, it had been ruled by the Merovingian kings. But by the year 700, their power had become a mere symbol, a shadow of their former glory. They were the do-nothing kings, and the real authority rested in the hands of the powerful court officials known as the mayors of the palace.
One such mayor was a man of immense ambition and military genius, Charles, later known as Martel, the Hammer. His defining moment, and one of the most significant moments of the century, came in the year 732. A massive Umayyad army, having already conquered the Iberian Peninsula, pushed north across the Pyrenees, deep into the heart of Francia.
Near the city of Tours, Charles Martel's army of disciplined Frankish infantry stood as a bulwark against the formidable Muslim cavalry, which had seemed invincible. For days the battle raged. The Umayyad horsemen crashed against the Frankish shield wall again and again, but it would not break. In the brutal melee, the Umayyad commander was slain, and the invading army, its leadership lost, broke and retreated.
The Battle of Tours was a pivotal event. It halted the northward expansion of Islamic rule in Western Europe and cemented the reputation of Charles Martel as the savior of Christendom. More importantly, it solidified the power of his family. His son, Pepin the Short, saw no reason to maintain the pretense of Merovingian rule any longer.
In 751, with the blessing of Pope Zachary, Pepin deposed the last Merovingian king and had himself anointed king of the Franks. This act marked the official beginning of the Carolingian dynasty. This new, powerful alliance between the Frankish kings and the papacy in Rome would reshape the political and religious map of Europe for centuries to come.
This alliance laid the groundwork for Pepin's son, a man whose ambition, vision, and military prowess would define the age to come. He was crowned King of the Franks in 768. His name was Charles, but history would grant him a greater title, Charlemagne, or Charles the Great.
Charlemagne was a relentless military commander. For over 3 decades, he waged a series of brutal campaigns to expand his kingdom and spread Christianity. He fought the Lombards in Italy, the Avars in Central Europe, and in a long and bloody conflict spanning decades, he subjugated the Saxons in the east, forcing their conversion to Christianity upon penalty of death. Through these conquests, he more than doubled the size of the Frankish kingdom.
But Charlemagne was more than a warrior. He was a visionary administrator who sought to create a unified Christian empire. He standardized laws and currency, reformed the church, and, despite being barely literate himself, championed a revival of learning and the arts, known as the Carolingian Renaissance. scholars from all over Europe were invited to his court at Aachen, where they copied ancient manuscripts, developed a new, more legible script, and laid the foundations for medieval education.
Meanwhile, the Eastern Roman Empire, which we call Byzantium, was fighting for its very survival. The 8th century found its capital, Constantinople, as the last great bastion of Christian Roman civilization in the East, besieged by powerful enemies on all sides. The greatest of these threats came from the Umayyad Caliphate, which in 717 launched a massive land and sea invasion with the goal of extinguishing the empire once and for all.
While the Carolingians were rising in the West, the Islamic world was undergoing its own seismic shift. The Umayyad Caliphate, ruling from its opulent capital in Damascus, was the largest empire the world had yet seen, stretching from Spain to the borders of India. But its very vastness was a source of weakness. The empire was rife with internal dissent and political rivalries.
Many non-Arab Muslims felt they were treated as second-class citizens by the Arab ruling elite. Pious believers felt the Umayyad caliphs had become too secular, too worldly, straying from the true path of the faith. From the empire's easternmost province of Khorasan, a rebellion began to smolder, a movement that coalesced around the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad's uncle, Al-Abbas.
In the year 750, the black banners of the Abbasid rebels met the Umayyad army at the Battle of the Zab River. The result was a crushing, decisive defeat for the Umayyads. The caliph was killed, and the Abbasids ruthlessly hunted down the remaining members of the family, extinguishing the dynasty to secure their power. The Abbasid revolution was complete.
The new Abbasid rulers signaled a dramatic break with the past. They moved the capital of the caliphate from Damascus to a new city, built from the ground up on the banks of the river Tigris. They named it Medinat al-Salam, the City of Peace. We know it today as Baghdad.
The move to Baghdad marked a profound change. The empire's cultural and political focus shifted eastward, away from its Mediterranean roots, and toward a more Persian-influenced identity. This was the dawn of the Islamic Golden Age. Under the patronage of the Abbasid caliphs, Baghdad became the world's undisputed center for science, philosophy, medicine, and art, a beacon of learning and innovation while much of Europe was still deep in its so-called Dark Ages.
At the heart of this golden age was the Great Library of Baghdad, the Beit al-Hikmah, or House of Wisdom. Here, scholars from different cultures and religions, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish, collaborated to translate the great works of Greek, Persian, and Indian thinkers into Arabic. It was an unprecedented effort to gather all of the world's knowledge under one roof.
This translation movement sparked a wave of innovation. The scholar Al-Khwarizmi pioneered algebra and introduced the Hindu-Arabic numerals that we use to this day. In the observatories of Baghdad, astronomers mapped the stars with incredible accuracy, and in its hospitals, physicians like Al-Razi made groundbreaking discoveries in medicine, writing texts that would be used in Europe for centuries.
Across the English Channel from the rising Franks, the island of Britain remained a patchwork of competing Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. During the latter half of the 8th century, the kingdom of Mercia, under the shrewd and powerful King Offa, became the dominant power in southern England. Offa was a major European ruler, corresponding with Charlemagne as an equal, reforming the currency, and building a massive earthwork, Offa's Dyke, to mark the border with the Welsh kingdoms.
But England's relative peace, and indeed the peace of all of coastal Europe, was about to be shattered. On the 8th of June, 793, a new player entered the world stage. They arrived not with diplomats or merchants, but with fire, steel, and terror.
From the north, sleek, dragon-prowed longships appeared off the coast of Northumbria. They made landfall at the holy island of Lindisfarne, a revered center of Christianity, home to a wealthy and crucially undefended monastery. The raiders, whom we now know as Vikings, stormed the priory. They slaughtered the monks, plundered the church of its priceless gold and silver artifacts, and then, as quickly as they came, they sailed away, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable horror.
The news sent a shock wave across the Christian world. The Anglo-Saxon scholar Alcuin, then serving at Charlemagne's court, wrote in a letter, "Never before has such a terror appeared in Britain as we have now suffered from a pagan race. The heathens poured out the blood of saints around the altar and trampled on the bodies of saints in the temple of God like dung in the streets."
But who were these raiders, and why did they suddenly burst forth from Scandinavia? The causes are complex. A growing population may have pushed men to seek new lands and fortune abroad. Internal political struggles forced chieftains and warriors into exile. But perhaps most crucial was their technology. The Viking longship, a masterpiece of naval engineering, shallow enough to sail up rivers, yet strong enough to cross the open ocean, it gave them unparalleled mobility.
The Vikings were not simply mindless barbarians. They were shrewd opportunists. They learned of the wealthy, poorly defended monasteries of Christian Europe, and they saw them as easy targets. The raid on Lindisfarne was not a random act of violence, but a calculated strike. It was the beginning of a strategy of hit-and-run raids that would bring them immense wealth and make the name Viking a synonym for terror across the continent.
The raid on Lindisfarne was more than just a robbery. It was a brutal announcement. It marked the beginning of the Viking Age, a period of raiding, trading, and conquest that would terrorize and ultimately transform Europe for the next 2 centuries. A new disruptive force had been unleashed upon the world.
The 8th century was a whirlwind of creation and destruction. In the West, the Carolingian dynasty rose from the ranks of court officials to forge a powerful new empire in the heart of Europe, creating a lasting alliance with the Church that would define the political landscape of the Middle Ages.
In the East, the Abbasid Revolution did more than just change a ruling family. It unleashed a golden age of intellectual and cultural flourishing. The new city of Baghdad became a beacon of learning for the world, preserving ancient knowledge and making breathtaking new discoveries.
And from the misty fjords of Scandinavia, the Vikings erupted onto the scene, a fearsome force of chaos and change, whose impact was only just beginning to be felt across the seas.
As the year 800 dawned, these 3 worlds, the Carolingian, the Abbasid, and the Viking, were set on a course of conflict, competition, and ultimately connection. The century had redrawn the map of the world. The seeds of empire, of faith, of knowledge, and of terror planted in these 100 years would grow to shape the destiny of nations and the very course of human history.